Hello all, welcome to this session. In this session, I'm going to answer one of the Java interview questions. That is, write a Java program which results in interrupted exception. Let me answer. If you have to understand the answer for this question, we have to go in a practical way, guys. Otherwise, you'll not be able to answer this particular question. So, without any explanation, I'll directly switch to this, Eclipse IDE. Here, I'm going to create a new class. I'll just name this class as class 22 with some random name I'm creating. And also inside this class 22, I'm creating a main method. So here, when I run this program, guys, when I run this program, this is a single threaded program. Okay, first of all, understand that whatever the logic I have written here is a single threaded. Here I'll write. So when I run this program here, let's write one thread has started. Okay, I'll just name that thread as, because we are running the main method, right? Main thread started, I'll say. Okay, main thread started. And here system.out.println, here main thread ended, I'll write. Okay, one thread will run. Okay, by default, only one thread will be there in this simple program. There are not multiple threads. There are not multiple threads. This is the program which represents a single thread only. Okay, this main method will initiate a new thread and main thread started, main thread ended will come. Run this code and you will see that this main thread started, main thread ended output will be printed in the output like this. So far, so good. Now, I would like to halt this main thread. Okay, this is the only thread that is there in the program, right? This is a single threaded program. That single thread I would like to halt. How to halt that thread dot sleep? I will halt. Okay. How much time I want to halt? Let's say I would like to halt for 5 seconds. So here Java is very clever that it's giving you a compiler error suggesting that this particular line may result in an interrupted exception. Okay. But this is a single threaded program. So no other thread at this case will come and interrupt this particular main thread. Okay, it's a single thread, right? Only one thread is there in this program. So I'm kind of confident that no other thread will kind of interrupt that. I'll ignore the exception. So exception will not occur here, guys. Interrupted exception will not occur because this is only single threaded program and this thread is not going to be interrupted by any other thread. There is no possibility here because this program is a single thread. It will start a main thread. It will end the main thread. And in that, it will halt that particular thread before printing main thread ended, right? The program, that particular thread will halt for 5 seconds. Once the thread resumes after thread dot sleep, main thread ended will be printed. You see that. Okay, because this single thread program, main thread started after 5 seconds. After 5 seconds, main thread ended will come. Okay, this is what happens in general. But what I am trying to do now is, here I am going to create an object for the thread class in Java. Okay, to create one more thread. Till now, in the main method, only one thread was running. This program was a single threaded program, but not now. What I am doing, I'm just creating another thread. Thread is equal to new thread. Okay, thread is equal to new thread, and this constructor cannot be empty, guys. Here inside this constructor, I'll create a lambda expression. If you don't know about lambda expression, it is also called as a nameless function. You see, function name will be there in the constructor. You are passing a function, guys. Okay, you have to write the function, otherwise this will not work. And you have to put this arrow kind of symbol. Okay, when there are 0 arguments, then you can put circular brackets. Then for lambda expression, as part of the function declaration, if you have multiple statements, you can write curly braces. Only one statement. It's optional whether you want to put the curly braces or not is optional. But I have to write multiple statements. I am writing curly braces here. Okay. So here it's a nameless function. You see, some name is there, and this will look like a method. It looks like a method. Now, if I remove this name, it's like a nameless. I don't have to create a name. In this constructor of the thread, I'm passing the nameless function with the help of lambda expression. Okay. So here, this particular method doesn't have any name. So only circular brackets are there. If there are 0 arguments, you can put the circular brackets. Okay. Then you can give this arrow kind of thing, hyphen and greater than symbol you have to give. And after that, if that particular nameless function or nameless method has multiple statements, then you have to write curly braces and press enter here. This is starting of the function. This is the ending of the function or method, whatever you call. In this, I'll write thread dot sleep. How much time? Let's say thread dot sleep for 2 seconds. I'll give. Okay, thread dot sleep for 2 seconds. Okay, here I'll get the suggestion to surround with try catch block. So I have surrounded this with try catch block. Okay. The program may look complex for you, but these are the statements that are inside this nameless function, which are passing to this thread constructor. Okay. So fine. And here, whenever I want to start a thread, I can call this thread method and start case. Okay. Whenever I want to start a thread, new thread, you see the main thread will start here. Main thread will start. And along with the main thread, you also want to start this particular thread. So here, system.out.println, in the type block, I'll write down system.out.println, system.out.println. Here I'll say new thread started. New thread started. After 2 seconds, I'll write system.out.println. New thread ended. Okay. You can call this thread any number of times. Guys, first of all. Okay. So here we have the thread. So is the object reference of the thread class, which contains what will happen when you start the thread. The thread will start and new thread started will be printed. And after that, the new thread will be going to sleep mode, altered for 2 seconds. After that, new thread ended will be printed. Okay. You can call this, you can start this thread any number of times. So what I will do is, first of all, when I run this main method, right? When I run the main method, the main thread will automatically start. I don't have to specially start the main thread because this single threaded program, if before this particular line came, this main method is running is only possible because if there is a thread only, the Java will assign one thread to this execution of the code. But apart from this single threaded program, which is actually running this main method, I want to create multiple threads. For that reason only, I created the object for the thread class. And in the constructor of the thread, I've created a lambda expression, which is a nameless function. And inside the code of that nameless function or method, I wrote this thread.sleep and surrounded with try catch block. Just for our understanding, I said, whenever the new thread started, whenever the new thread ended, I want to know that. Here also we have main thread started, original main thread started, main thread ended. Now, once this main thread started, what I will do is, once the main thread started, what I will do here is, I'll start another thread. I'll start another thread. Thread dot start, I'll say. What will happen? Now this will become a multi-threaded program. Okay. Originally only main thread was there, only single threaded. You don't have to specially create a thread class for that because the program is there, means Java will assign one thread to this particular program and the main thread will start. The main thread will start here. Okay. But here already main thread started, while already one thread is running. I'm creating this program in a multi-threaded way where apart from this main thread, I'm starting one more thread. While this thread is going on, while thread is going on, I'm starting one more thread. So new thread started, 2 seconds will be there. Okay. New thread started, 2 seconds will be there. The thread and new thread ended will come. Okay. New thread ended will come. Fine. New thread started after 2 seconds, new thread will be ended. So let's see what is happening. When I say start means what is happening. First, main thread will start. Okay. The main thread, which is a single threaded program, right? The main thread will start. After that, the next line will be executed, that is thread.start. It will start a new thread. New thread started, it will halt for 2 seconds and new thread ended. After this 2 seconds is over, already the main thread started. After the 2 seconds is remaining 5 seconds. While the 2 seconds is going on, parallelly 2 threads are going, guys. Okay. This thread is taking 2 seconds. By the time the another thread will start parallelly. Okay. It will be very fast, guys. It will say main thread started. Okay. Main thread already started. And here new thread is also starting. New thread will halt for 2 seconds and main thread will halt for 5 seconds. While one of the thread is halting for 2 seconds, another thread is halting for while the main thread is halting for 5 seconds, new thread is halting for how many seconds? 2 seconds. After this particular thread execution completes, okay, there will be 3 more seconds for the main thread to complete. You are able to get my point, right? I'll explain otherwise in other ways. Okay. Originally, there will be only one thread, guys. Okay. If you don't create this kind of program in this logic, okay, assume that this particular thing is not there. In that case, only one thread will be there. Only one thread will be there. That is nothing but the main thread. I gave the name. Okay. There is nothing like we should be calling that as main thread, but just to give some name, right? I'm saying some thread has started. Single threaded program, right? Main thread has started. So what happens here? Here already one thread is there that has started here. Okay, the thread will start. It has started here. This is thread 1. I'll just say that as thread 1 has started. Okay. Thread 1 has started. So I don't have to specially say thread dot start to start this particular thread, because the main method automatically a thread will be allocated for this program. And here what will be printed in the beginning of the thread? Main thread started will be printed. Main thread started will be printed. Okay, here. And now, once the main thread started, I manually started another thread here, thread dot stop. How did I start? I wrote the code like this. Okay, to start that thread, to start that using the object reference of this thread class, and by writing this logic, right, I have started the thread. But this particular new thread, okay, the moment I say thread dot start, this particular thread, another thread will start. Okay, parallelly, while the main method started, okay, after printing main thread started, here second thread also will start. Okay, second thread will also start. So now it becomes a multi-threaded program, right? It becomes a multi-threaded program. Here, when the second thread starts, here I'll write down new thread started will be printed. New thread started will be printed. Okay, new thread started will be printed. 1 minute. I'll just go back. Okay, I'll just write only this much of line, because the length of the thread is not that much. It's only 2 seconds, right? So I'll just write only this much, not this much. Okay, here I'll say new thread started. New thread started. So now at this point of time, at the line, okay, at the line 19, by the line 19, how many threads are there in the program? 2 threads are there. One is the main thread, another one is the new thread. Main thread and new thread, 2 threads are parallelly running. This is a multi-threaded program now. Okay. Now, there came a situation where when I say new thread started, what is the wait time of the new thread? 2 seconds. Okay. Here, 2 seconds is the halting time. We are halting this thread for how many seconds? 2 seconds. So after the 2 seconds completed, here, new thread ended will be printed. New thread ended will be printed, guys. New thread ended will be printed. Okay. Here, new thread started. Halting period is only 2 seconds. And here, new thread ended will be printed. That's it. The thread will be completed here. This particular thread is completed. Okay. After 2 seconds, how many threads will be left out? This thread will be disappearing because the task is completed. And there is only one thread here. That is the main thread is there. Okay. It also completes 2 seconds. But the halting time for the main thread is 5 seconds. By the time this thread is completed, second thread is completed. By the time this second thread is completed, okay, by the time second thread is completed, the first thread is, main thread is in the halfway. It has 3 more seconds to complete. It has 3 more seconds. It's between. Okay, it has 3 more seconds to complete. First, second thread has been completed, but the main thread is still going on, because the halt period for the main thread is how many seconds? 5 seconds. So what I will do is, once the second thread completes, before this, you see this particular thread is already parallelly running of only after 2 seconds are over, it is between. It's running is first thread, that is the main thread, is in between, guys. Okay, 2 seconds completed. 2 seconds complete, almost halfway it is there. While it is on halfway, while the thread is running, what I will do is I'll write thread dot current thread dot interrupt. What happens here? After 2 seconds, after this second thread completed, after this thread started and 2 seconds, new thread started, 2 seconds completed, the new thread ended. After the end of the second thread, while the first thread is in between, here I'm saying halt the current thread. How many threads are there after 2 seconds? After 2 seconds, how many threads are there? Only one thread. That is nothing but the main thread. That current main thread I'm interrupting using the interrupt method. I'm going to interrupt that. I'm going to forcibly stop that. So I'm going to forcibly stop that, guys. Okay. Thread dot current, already thread started, and after 2 seconds, okay, after 2 seconds, I'm interrupting the thread. Okay, here you see, since I am writing thread dot sleep, it will halt for 2 seconds. Till then, it will not interrupt. By the time it will go into the 2 seconds will already be completed in the main thread. Okay, 2 seconds will already be completed in the main thread, and here interrupt method will interrupt the current thread after 2 seconds. Before this 5 seconds complete, Okay, before this 5 seconds, the thread already started, guys. 2 seconds is already over. 2 seconds is already over. We don't know how much time is left out. While the thread is running, while the thread is still running, before the thread dot sleep, before this thread dot sleep of 5 seconds started. Okay, maybe here there may be 5 seconds more, guys. It can wait for 5 seconds because the thread started, but you know, before the thread is completed, here it may be 5 seconds basically. Okay, the first thread is blindly running because of the another thread running, right? Another thread running or something. The main thread started already, but we have started another thread. It's been 2 seconds already. The main thread started because of this thread. This thread is also running. So now in that situation, before the thread dot sleep of 5 seconds come, before this main thread also halts for 5 seconds here, before the main thread also halts for 5 seconds here, what I am writing thread dot current thread dot interrupt I'm saying. So what will happen after the second thread completes, the main thread I am interrupting. Okay, main thread I am interrupting. It's a multi-threaded program. There is in multi-threaded program environment, there's a possibility of interrupting the threads. We can interrupt this thread or whatever the current thread is. I want to interrupt. At that time, only current thread is the main thread. We started long back. Okay. And after the second thread completed, I am interrupting the other thread. So for a different purpose. But here, if the main thread interrupts, it will throw an exception, guys. Okay. If the main thread gets interrupted and thread dot sleep is going to happen, this thread dot halting will not happen, right? If the thread is interrupted, how can you halt for 5 seconds? If this main thread is interrupted, how can you halt for 5 seconds? So it will interrupt the current thread since the main thread is already interrupted, and when the situation of thread dot sleep comes, so the thread has to sleep for 5 seconds, but the current thread is already interrupted. How can Java program halt the interrupted thread? That is not possible. Hence, this particular statement in 23rd line will give you an exception known as interrupted exception. Since we have ignored the exception in the output, we are going to get that exception, guys. So just see here what is happening. First, main thread started will say, new thread will started. Okay, new thread started, and after the new thread started, after 2 seconds of the new thread, you see it has thrown this exception. Main thread got interrupted here. Okay, while this has started, the other thread got interrupted, guys. The other thread got interrupted. Before 2 seconds only, it got interrupted, guys. Basically, it don't have to be interrupted here. Before the thread started, and there are two threads. Exactly, there are two threads, and we are interrupting the first thread. Okay, so this is happening in a different way. Let me answer this in a different way. It's kind of a complex topic, guys. So that's just be with me. I'll just go back to help you understand the program again so that you'll understand what is going on here. So this is the thread one. Okay, thread one already started. Thread one started, guys. Okay, thread one started. Here, as you can see here, when I write the code like, without this one, with this or without this one, what happens here is, first of all, it will print main thread started. Here, what will be printed, guys? Main thread started will be printed. Okay, main thread started will be printed. First of all, main thread started will be printed, and thread has started actually. While the thread has started, while this particular thread has started, parallelly, we are starting another thread. We are here. If this particular code is not there, if I have not written thread dot start here, it will not become a multi-threaded environment. Thread dot start will start this particular thread. This new thread will start now. Okay. So because of that thread dot start, another thread is parallelly starting. While the main thread started, after the main thread started, while it is on the go, second thread started. That is T2 thread. T2 thread has started. Okay. This T2 thread has started. And when the 3.2 thread has started, it will simply print out. As you can see the output, how the output has come. Based on the output, we can understand what happened, guys. So when the second thread started, here new thread started. At this time, how many threads are there, guys, in the program? How many threads are there? New thread started. Here at in this program, how many threads are there? There are two threads. This is a main thread and this is a new thread. Both are started. Now this became a multi-threaded environment, and at this line 19, after the main thread got printed, since the new thread also started, a new thread started also got printed. Now the new thread to end, how much time it has? Halting time. While the new thread is halting for 2 seconds, okay, while the new thread is in the period of halting for 2 seconds here, after new thread, it will have the time period of 2 seconds. while this second thread is halting, what we have done in the program is we have written thread dot current thread dot interrupt. Okay, thread dot this thread. Okay, thread dot current thread means main thread. We are interrupting the main thread. So what will happen? This particular thread, while this thread is in the halting period of 2 seconds, while it is sleeping for 2 seconds, in between these 2 seconds only, this main thread got halted, interrupted. The main thread got interrupted. After what happened? No more, main thread is no more. Okay. This is 2 seconds is going on. The main thread is no more, guys. It got interrupted already. It got stopped. Okay. Forcibly, we stopped the thread one. There is no thread one now. That main thread is not there. And the second thread has started. And after completing of the 2 seconds, first thread got interrupted, but the second thread is still running. So new thread ended will be printed here. Okay. New thread ended. After 2 seconds, new thread ended will be printed. Till now, no problem. Till now, no problem. After 2 seconds, what is happening? After 2 seconds, what is happening? The control, after 2 seconds, during the 2 seconds itself, guys, okay, during the 2 seconds while the thread is halting, right, we interrupted the main thread. And since we interrupted the main thread, during the 2 seconds period only, guys, after the 2 seconds, it will print new thread ended. But during the 2 seconds process, what is happening is, during the 2 seconds process, what is happening is, it will interrupt the current thread and it will try to halt for 5 seconds. Will it be possible? Once the thread is interrupted, while this process is going on, while the new state started and during this duration, somewhere in between, while the new thread is getting executed, okay, the main thread got interrupted and the main thread also will run parallelly, right? It will not just wait for the thread 2. Threads are multi-threaded. That means while the thread 2 is running and is halting period, the main thread is interrupted. Thread dot current thread dot interrupt, main thread got interrupted. And while during that period of main thread started and the main thread got interrupted here, a new line is coming saying thread dot sleep for 5 seconds. Okay, we have 5,000 milliseconds. This particular thread has to halt for 5 seconds, but this thread already got interrupted. This thread already got interrupted immediately after new thread started, before printing new thread ended. During that period of 2 seconds halting period, the main thread got interrupted and thread dot sleep, which has to run parallelly, got interrupted. And this halting is not possible anymore because thread is already interrupted. So halting is not possible. Before the start of 5 seconds only, halting has not started. And this particular thread dot sleep, because it's trying to halt the program for 5 seconds. It's trying to halt this thread one for 5 seconds, but that is not possible because that particular that main thread already got halted. So this won't be possible. Because it won't be possible, Java will give you an exception known as interrupted exception. During that exception, this thread is going on. Second thread is already going on. So during this particular interruption, the second thread is going on. That's the reason here we got the output as exception in the main thread. In the line Java line 23, this line has given you an interrupted exception because it got interrupted. It cannot halt anymore. So since the exception came, but here this thread dot sleep is part of the first thread. Second thread is already running parallelly, separately. Okay, this thread has halted. This thread has thrown an interrupted exception, but the new thread is still running. After the ending of the 2 seconds, what happened here? New thread ended is coming. New thread ended got printed. The story of the new thread is over. Okay, the story of the new thread, the task has been completed. New thread is completed now. Okay, new thread is completed. But here in the first thread, the exception came. Because of the exception came, so it will not execute the remaining statements. Okay, after this thread dot sleep, if you write this main thread ended will not be printed because that main thread program or that main thread process has resulted in an interrupted exception. Even though you got interrupted exception in the main thread, the other thread was parallelly running, guys. Okay, it doesn't matter. The other thread is parallelly running, but the main thread we got the interruption, and because of that interruption, so that dot sleep has not been happened, and that has thrown interrupted exception. This is a program, guys. Okay, I understand this program is kind of complex, but this is a way to understand, guys. Okay, so in multi-threaded environments, we can interrupt the threads. Okay, we can interrupt the threads. While the other thread is running, we can close the current thread. Okay, while the other thread is running, we can close the current thread, interrupt the current thread, and because of the main thread got interrupted, halting is not possible. This statement has to halt that particular thread for 5 seconds, but it's trying to halt an interrupted thread which doesn't exist. That's the reason we got interrupted exception here. Okay, interrupted. If you surround this with try catch block and handle the exception saying that this particular thread got interrupted by the interrupted exception. If this particular current thread got interrupted, that means main thread ended also will be printed. Okay. So if I don't put try catch blocks be surrounding this red dot sleep, then only we'll get the exception outside. Otherwise, if I surround this try catch blocks here, surround this particular thing with the try catch blocks, try catch interrupted exception. In this case, we'll not get an exception, guys. Okay, in this case, we'll not get an exception. Exception E, and here system.out.println handled exception plus E, I'll say plus E. This will print the details of the exception details. Okay, because the exception got handled here, the remaining thread portion will be continued and main thread ended will be printed this time without throwing the exception. You see, main thread started, new thread started. While the new thread is going on, we got the main thread got interrupted because of this line thread.current thread.interrupt. While the new thread is continuing the halting process and it's going on, some execution is going on in the new thread. The main thread got interrupted, because of which this thread.sleep has resulted in, since we interrupted the main thread while this thread is going on, the main thread got interrupted, and because of that interruption, exception came and we handled the exception. Because the exception has handled, main thread ended will be printed. Okay. Even though it is interrupted, we have handled the exception and main thread ended, and finally, after the time period of 2 seconds is completed, new thread ended will come. Okay. So this is the best way I can explain this program, guys. Okay. So we are simply trying to interrupt when they're in the we are going to when you can reproduce this interrupted exception is you have to create a multi-threaded environment. And while the multi-threaded environment is going on, while the other thread is running, I would like to interrupt the main thread. And I would like to invoke this after interrupting the main thread intentionally. I will try to halt the program for 5 seconds or whatever the seconds. That is not going to happen. And that thread.sleep statement is going to give you interrupted exception, because thread is already interrupted. You cannot halt it. That's the reason Java program will result in interrupted exception. So if you handle the exception, if you handle this exception that is coming, main thread ended also will come. Main thread, the thread will be handled, and interruption of the thread will be handled, and it will continue the thread, and main thread ended will be printed. Otherwise, directly the program execution will stop in the main thread. Okay, while the new thread will continue irrespective of the exception. Okay, so this is what I can explain about the program that results in this interrupted exception, guys. Okay, so if you don't understand this answer for this question, try to listen to this 2 or 3 times, guys. It will be clear for you. Okay, it will be clear for you. So we simply have to create multi-threaded environment, and while the another thread is new thread is running, we have to interrupt the main thread intentionally. And when the main thread is interrupted intentionally, you try to halt the main thread for some time. And that will not happen because that main thread is already interrupted, because of which you will get interrupted exception, guys. Okay. In conclusion, this is the thing. But if you don't understand this program, practice this program 2 to 3 times, you will be able to understand. Okay. So that's all for this session, and that's all for this session, guys, where I've answered the result of interrupted exception by writing a sample Java program. Okay. So hope you got the answer for this question. Thank you. Bye bye.